Reflecting on the past, I recall how hopeful and joyful my life once was. Sherry and I were college sweethearts, bound by shared dreams and an effortless bond. We met through a mutual friend, and from that first encounter, I was enchanted by her laughter and the way she viewed the world with eyes full of wonder. She wasn't a conventional beauty sung about in songs, but she was mine, and I adored her for every reason that mattered. Our first home was a modest condo in Van Nuys where we began building our life. Days turned into years filled with plans, late-night conversations, and mornings brightened by the laughter of our children, Shelby and Ryan. Years went by, and as our careers advanced, Sherry becoming a successful real estate agent and me working as an electronics engineer, we settled into a comfortable life, believing our marriage was solid. At least, that's what I thought. The everyday routine of work, family dinners, and Saturday park visits created an illusion of stability. Yet, hidden within those moments, cracks formed, unseen and silent. Now I see that I was too blind, too trusting, wrapped in the certainty of a love I thought could never break. The signs were ready by the front door, carefully crafted over the past 2 days. Each one bore words I knew would change my life forever. I climbed the stairs, heart heavy but determined, and went into the master bedroom. I pulled back the sheets and pushed the king-size mattress off the frame, maneuvering it down the stairs, through the hallway, and finally out to the lawn. I paused, caught my breath, and went back for more. I returned to the house, went upstairs, tossed the bedding down the stairs, and took it outside, placing it in a pile next to the mattress. I glanced at the clock. 4:22. I needed to hurry and finish by 5. I took apart the bed, carried it outside piece by piece, and by 4:35, the bed was reassembled on the lawn. Next was the kitchen table. Light enough to carry, I turned it sideways and walked it out the door, placing it beside the bed on the lawn. The last item was a 6x8 rug from the living room. I rolled it up and set it alongside the other items, arranged the signs, and noted with pride that it was only 4:55. Just 10 minutes left before Sherry would be home. I walked to the middle of the street and turned to admire my work. It looked striking enough to bring tears to my eyes. My wife's bed and our marital bed, the kitchen table, and the rug. 3 places where I knew, without a doubt, she and her lover had been intimate over the past 6 months. The signs were posted high, out of reach, and one by one I read them. A large sign in front of the items said, "These belongings are yours for free. They are no longer needed in this house. If you can tolerate the stench of infidelity and broken promises, take them." The sign above the bed read, "On this bed, my wife repeatedly broke her wedding vows by being with her lover twice a week for the past 6 months. Today was their last meeting." The kitchen table bore a sign stating, "My wife and her lover often spent time here, usually just hours before she served me dinner." Above the rug hung a sign. Each sign was paired with a 17x24 photograph of Sherry and her lover in action, taken on the respective pieces of furniture. The 5th sign, posted behind the table, read, "My wife's lover is her boss, Greg Allen of Mitchell, Price and Allen Realty. He is married and has 3 children. His wife doesn't know yet, but she will soon. 4:57, right on time. She would be home any minute." I glanced around and saw that a crowd of neighbors had already gathered, curious about what I was doing. A few cars had stopped and people were on their phones, either inviting friends to watch or calling the police on me for public indecency. I waved casually and stepped back inside, shutting the door. At exactly 5:05 p.m., I saw Sherry's car turn the corner and slow as she approached our house. Seeing the crowd gathered and looking at our yard, she pulled up in front of the home we had shared for 10 years and stared at the items and the signs, her eyes locking onto the large photos of her and Greg Allen. Even through the car window, the noise of the crowd and the window of my house, I heard her scream, "No! Oh God, no!" Her gaze shifted from the signs to the front window, where she saw me. We stared at each other. Her face was pale and heartbroken, tears streaming down her cheeks as if asking, "Why?" I had the same question for her. After a moment, I turned away and drew the curtains. My name is Jack Meyer, and I should explain how Sherry and I ended up in this tragic situation. We met in college during my freshman year, introduced by a mutual friend. From the first meeting, I was captivated. Sherry wasn't classically beautiful, but she was charming and hot. 5 feet 2 inches tall, with striking blue eyes and shoulder-length blonde hair. Her petite frame was perfectly proportioned, with ample curves and a slim waist that drew me in. She didn't know it then, but I had already decided I couldn't imagine not being with her. Sherry and I began dating, and within weeks, we became a couple. A month after we met, we made love for the first time, and it was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I was infatuated with Sherry and couldn't get enough of her. Neither of us were maids, but our experiences were limited, and we delighted in exploring each other. I can confidently say we were as in love as two people could be. We married right after high school and moved into our first home, a condo in Van Nuys. Sherry earned her real estate license and started working at one of the top agencies in the area. I used my engineering degree to secure a good job at an electronics company, and we settled into what I thought was an ideal life. For the next 13 years, we lived a wonderful life together. We first lived in our apartment, and as our income grew, we bought our dream house and expanded our family. Our daughter Shelby came first, now 8 years old. 2 years later, our son Ryan was born, now 6 years old. Sherry and I adored them both. We lived for each other and our family. So what went wrong? Sadly, I can't say. I wish I could claim I noticed subtle signs that hinted at trouble, but I didn't. I was completely blind and content, living in a world of unwavering love and trust in my wife. It took a fortunate accident to bring me back to reality, an accident involving our daughter Shelby getting sick at school. It was Thursday, just before noon, when the school nurse called to inform me that Shelby had come down with flu-like symptoms. I was in the middle of a staff meeting and asked the nurse to call my wife. The nurse told me she had tried calling Sherry at her office, but was informed that Sherry would be out for most of the day. She called our house, but there was no answer, so she left a message on Sherry's cell phone, only for it to go to voicemail. The nurse reached out to me because Shelby needed to be picked up as soon as possible. I apologized to my colleagues and rushed to Shelby's school to pick her up and take her home. When we arrived and I opened the garage door, I was startled to see an unfamiliar car parked in my spot next to Sherry's car. A lump formed in my throat and my stomach twisted. No, this can't be happening, I thought. The idea of my wife, the woman I cherished more than anything, having an affair seemed impossible. Yet the strange car in the garage suggested otherwise. Something was terribly wrong and I needed answers. I couldn't let Shelby see any of this. Stay in the car for a moment, Shelby. Why? I want to sleep, she complained. I know, sweetie, but I think there's an exterminator inside spraying for bugs. The spray could make you feel worse, I lied. My first lie to her. Let me check and I'll come get you. Shelby whined a bit more, but lay back in the back seat to wait. I opened the door to the kitchen as quietly as possible, hoping to find Sherry and a friend enjoying coffee and conversation. But when I turned the corner, the kitchen was empty. I walked through the kitchen to the living room, hoping she was on the couch chatting, but no one was there either. Then I heard her laugh, a light, familiar laugh I knew well. It came from upstairs, and my heart dropped. The only rooms up there were the bedrooms. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to move forward. I needed to know, no matter how bad it was. I crept up the stairs, the carpet muffling my footsteps. The first room I passed was Shelby's, its door open and bed made. The next was Ryan's room, with the door closed. I moved past it when I heard Sherry's laugh again, coming from the master bedroom at the end of the hall. With my heart pounding, I stopped at the doorway and listened. At first, there was only silence. Then I heard the rhythmic sound of the bed softly hitting the wall, followed by Sherry's voice.
Oh God, Greg, so good. Yes, baby. Be my man.
Greg's voice came next, low and breathless.
It's nice, isn't it, Sherry?
Yes, Greg, you know it is. The best ever, she replied. I've told you that countless times. Even my pathetic husband, Jack. Greg let out a rough laugh. Even him? Sherry's tone shifted, a hint of defensiveness creeping in. Don't call Jack weak, Greg. He isn't. He just can't make me feel the way you do. He loves me and tries so hard, but every time he touches me, I think of you, filling me, completing me like no one else. My body went cold. My wife couldn't stand the way I made love to her. I needed to see, yet I didn't want to be seen. I knew my marriage was over, but needed visual proof. Heart shattered, I pushed the door open an inch to peek inside. What I saw destroyed the last bit of love I had for her. The man beside her was Greg Allen, her boss. My first impulse was to rush in and strike him senseless, but I knew that would land me in jail. After all, he hadn't forced my wife. She had willingly and enthusiastically given herself to him. Somehow, I managed to make it to the car, closed the garage door, started the engine, and pulled out of the driveway.
Dad, where are we going? I feel bad. I just want to go to bed,
Shelby said. I know, Shelby, but I was right. Whatever is going on in the house will only make you feel worse. I was only inside for a minute, and I don't feel well either. Not wanting to tell her the truth, but also not wanting to lie, I added, I'll take you to Grandma's for a while, until things settle down. The drive to my mom's house took 15 minutes, and my mind raced the entire way. My marriage was over, finished, beyond any chance of saving. There was no way I could stay with the woman I'd just seen moments ago, tangled up with her lover in my bed. My bed. What a betrayal. I hit the steering wheel with my fist as tears slid down my face. Dad, what's wrong? Shelby asked. It's okay, Shelby, I'm fine. Don't worry about it, I said, trying to sound calm. I left Shelby with my mom, saying I'd be back in a couple of hours. I didn't share anything about what I'd seen. I just told her to watch Shelby until I got back from work. Part of me wanted to storm back home and confront them, but I realized I needed more than just a confrontation. I needed a plan for revenge. Driving back to my office, I started forming a strategy to bring my wife and her boss down. The electronics company I worked for had multiple divisions. When I reached my office, I instructed my secretary, please, no interruptions for the rest of the day. I then called Dan Taylor, my longtime friend from college and a colleague in the security department. He arrived 20 minutes later. Hey, Jack, what's going on? Dan asked as he stepped in. Close the door, I said. Dan's eyes narrowed as he shut the door behind him. You look like you've just lost your best friend. It's worse than that, Dan. I need your help. Anything, Jack. What happened? He said, concern evident in his voice. I took a deep breath before answering. I caught my wife and her boss having sex in my house, in my bed, I said, my voice trembling. Dan's eyes widened. Damn, Jack, are you serious? I wish I wasn't, I replied. I went to pick up my daughter from school, and when I got home, there was an unfamiliar car in the garage. I snuck in and found them together. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but it was real. Damn, that's rough, Dan said, shaking his head. Did you confront them? No, I wanted to, but I couldn't risk Shelby seeing anything. She was in the car waiting for me, so I left quietly and took her to my mom's. Dan leaned forward. So, what's your plan now? I'm not sure yet, but I need evidence. I need video and audio proof if this happens again. That's where you come in. Dan's expression turned serious. You want cameras and microphones? Yes, I said. Something small enough to hide in a few rooms to capture everything. Dan paused, considering it. I can help with that. But how do you know they'll do it again? Maybe this was just a one-time thing. No, Dan, they talked about meeting regularly like this for the past 6 months. I don't know if it's always been at my house, but I'd bet on it. Hotels will leave a paper trail they can't afford, and Sherry is home during the day while I'm at work and the kids are at school. We discussed it further before moving on to logistics. Dan mentioned he had access to a new beta line of miniature wireless cameras and microphones that could connect to my laptop or home computer. He also had a small voice recorder that could be placed under Sherry's car seat to catch any conversation she might have while driving. It would only capture her side of the conversation, but that was better than nothing. I thanked him and agreed to pick everything up the next day. Coming home that night was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. The thought of facing Sherry and pretending everything was normal felt impossible. I decided my best course was to act as if I felt unwell, which wasn't far from the truth. After picking up Shelby from my mom's house, we returned home, where I found Sherry in the kitchen making dinner. Her expression shifted to anger the moment she saw Shelby. Where have you been? Why didn't you call me to tell me Shelby was sick? I just got a message from the school nurse, Sherry said, her voice laced with irritation. I kept my tone steady. The school tried calling you, Sherry, but you weren't available. They called your office and were told you were out. They left a message on the home phone and even tried your cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Sherry's eyes widened with realization. Oh my God. I must have accidentally turned it off when I was showing it to a client at home. I didn't have a free moment all day. Yes, I'm sure, I thought, watching her with a cold gaze. Too busy for your daughter. Sherry hugged Shelby and apologized, then helped her into bed. Despite everything, Sherry genuinely loved our kids. It was me who seemed to block her happiness, but that was going to change, and soon. After putting Shelby to bed, Sherry went back to the kitchen to make soup for her and finish preparing dinner for us all. I don't feel great either, I told her. I think I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, just in case I'm contagious. Sherry came over and placed her hand on my forehead. You do seem clammy, dear, and you look pale. Yes, I thought, pale and clammy. Exactly what happens when you catch your wife with another man in your bed. I didn't respond, just turned and walked upstairs. I went to the master bedroom first. I didn't want to go in, but I needed my shaving kit, toothbrush, and clothes for work the next day. Forcing myself inside, I noticed the window was open, the scent of Zex was gone, and the bed was made. She must have changed the sheets. The sight nearly shattered me. Rage surged, but I held it back. I needed to stay calm until I could bring down my full response. And I would. I collected my things and moved to the guest room, closing the door behind me. I stripped down to my underwear and got into bed. My body felt stiff and numb. I wanted to cry, but willed myself not to. I had a plan to execute and couldn't let emotions get in the way. I lay in the darkness for hours, unable to sleep. After feeding and putting the kids to bed, Sherry came in. I pretended to be asleep as she touched my forehead and left, softly closing the door. Sherry usually took the kids to school, so I woke up early, showered, and left before she woke. I didn't care how it looked. I just needed to get away from what I once believed was a marriage built on loyalty, honesty, and commitment. How blind I had been. How devastatingly wrong. At work, I arrived before anyone else, brewed coffee, and started organizing my next steps. I knew I needed to cancel our shared credit cards, transfer half of our joint accounts into one under my name, and update the beneficiaries on my will, life insurance, and 401k to include only Shelby and Ryan. It seemed simple to undo 13 years of life, yet it felt monumental. I also needed to find a divorce attorney to avoid being taken advantage of by Sherry. This was a no-fault divorce state, so her infidelity wouldn't affect the financial settlement. But it could help me secure custody of my kids. Sherry had shown how little I meant to her, but she was a good mother, and I didn't want to take the children away. I just wanted joint custody to remain a significant part of their lives. I pushed thoughts of her betrayal and the degrading words she'd said to her lover out of my mind. They could tear apart my confidence if I let them. I couldn't afford that. After finalizing my checklist, I called Dan's office. He assured me everything would be ready by noon, and even offered to help install the equipment and show me how to use it. I tried to concentrate on my work, but my phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Sherry. I paused before answering. "Hi, baby. How are you feeling?" she asked, her voice soft and concerned. "My stomach still hurts a bit," I replied. "I was worried about you. You left so early this morning before I could check on you," she said. "Yes," I responded evenly. "I had a lot to get done and not much time, so I headed in early." "Please, Jack, take care of yourself. I don't know what I'd do if anything happened to you. You, Shelby, and Ryan are my whole world," she said. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. "You have a funny way of showing it," I thought. Out loud, I said, "I'll be fine. If you're up for it tonight, I know a way to help you feel better," she added with a playful tone. The fact that I once believed in her empty words turned my stomach. "We'll see how I feel," I replied, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. "Wow, you really must be sick to sound so indifferent," she joked lightly. "Sherry, I just have a lot on my mind. I'll see you tonight." "Okay, honey. Call if you need anything. I'll be at the office all day," she said before hanging up. Good, I thought. Just what I needed to hear. I called Dan back and he confirmed everything was ready. By 3:30, we had installed and tested the cameras and microphones in the living room, kitchen, guest room, and the master bedroom, ensuring they captured clear audio and video. That night was one of the hardest of my life. I knew I couldn't fake being sick again. After dinner, once the kids were asleep, I followed Sherry to our bedroom. What happened next was far from love. It felt mechanical. Halfway through, Sherry whispered, "God, Jack, you make me feel so good. No one will ever love me the way you do." The bitter irony of her words almost made me choke. When it was over, I turned onto my side and feigned sleep. Sherry curled up behind me, her voice soft and uncertain. "Jack, I'm sorry if I didn't please you," she said. I responded flatly, "No, Sherry, you always do. Sometimes I just wonder if I'm enough for you." She sounded surprised. "Jack, why would you say that? You know you're my everything. I couldn't live without you. You've always been my true love." I stared into the darkness, my voice hollow. "Yes, but sometimes it's hard to believe." Her tone shifted to concern. "Jack, what's wrong with you?" "Nothing, Sherry. Just tired," I replied. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. Later, I heard Sherry crying quietly. I didn't feel any pity, just wondered if she felt guilty or was simply upset by how I was acting. The next morning, I woke up before she did and took the chance to place the voice recorder under the seat of her car. I checked the footage from the previous night. It was clear, even in low light. At breakfast, Sherry noticed my silence and frowned slightly. "You said something last night that hurt my feelings," she said, though her expression softened as she leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. Her mood lifted, and she added brightly, "I'll be showing houses today, but we'll pick up Shelby and Ryan after school." Good, I thought, keeping my expression neutral. Today's plans will lead her right into my setup. I handed her a cup of coffee. "I'll be busy in my office all day," I said. As I headed toward the door, Sherry called after me. "Jack, you forgot to say you love me. You know I need to hear it every morning." I paused briefly. "Sorry, Sherry, I think you should already know how I feel." "I've got a lot on my mind," I replied, then walked out without looking back. "Okay, I'll let it slide this time." "But don't forget, every woman needs to hear it," she teased. "I won't," I said as I walked out. Someday I'd tell someone I loved them again, but not Sherry. Her mentioning her full schedule made me think she would probably spend time with the real love of her life. I hoped that was true. I was tired of pretending and wanted this nightmare to end. I spent the morning working at my office while watching the clock. Finally, around noon, I told my secretary I'd be out for a few hours and set my plan in motion. I borrowed the company van and parked across the street from my house, waiting. At about 1 p.m., Sherry pulled into the driveway. She opened the garage door, parked, and walked inside without closing the door, indicating she was either planning to leave again or waiting for someone. 10 minutes later, the car I had seen the day I first caught them arrived and pulled into the garage, taking my spot, just as he had taken my place in my wife's bed. I watched as he stepped out, and the garage door closed. I had to admit they were bold, meeting so openly in my home and in my bed. It only proved that they believed they'd never get caught, or they simply didn't care. Well, they were wrong on both counts. They were caught, and soon they'd care deeply. I would have the visual proof of their affair. For 13 years, I believed my wife would never cheat on me, just as I never would have betrayed her. Then doubt crept in. Was he really that much better? Why would she risk everything, our marriage and his, knowing I would tell his wife exactly what they were doing? I wanted so badly to storm inside and confront them. But why? I'd already caught them once without them knowing. Would confronting them make me feel better? Was it worth going to jail for attacking her lover? Neither of them was worth it. My only concern was how this would impact my kids, and his, since I planned to ruin him the way he ruined me. By 2:30, they were done. The garage door opened, and he backed out and drove away. 15 minutes later, Sherry did the same, closing the garage. I didn't waste time going through all the footage. I just needed to confirm the evidence was safely stored. In about 10 minutes, I'd seen enough. It wasn't an exact repeat of what I'd seen before, but was graphic enough. They started on the kitchen table, where I usually ate. They joked about how many times they'd done this, wondering if I'd ever realize I was eating where he had slept with her repeatedly. After that, they moved to the bedroom. Before they did, he suggested, "Why don't we try your daughter's room for a change of scenery?" Sherry snapped, "No way! It's bad enough I let you do this in my husband's space, but the kids' rooms are off limits." At least she had some boundaries, though none that protected me. In the bedroom, they undressed and spent the next 40 minutes together. I noticed that neither said they loved the other, but Sherry kept telling him he was the best lover she'd ever had. For the finale, they went to the living room rug by the fireplace. He dressed and left while she quickly showered and then left too. I found it odd that she didn't change the sheets, but assumed she planned to do so after picking up the kids, giving her enough time to clean and air out the room before I typically got home at 6. Knowing the evidence was safely stored on my hard drive, I turned off the system and left, not even bothering to check the condition of my ruined marriage bed. I had seen enough. Although I had hardened my heart against Sherry, I felt hollow inside, a pain that soon turned into seething anger and hatred. I think I even smiled, knowing the chaos I was about to unleash on them. Back at work, I told Dan everything I had seen and heard. Like me, he couldn't comprehend how a supposedly loving wife like Sherry could do this. Not only had she broken our sacred vows, but she had gone out of her way to humiliate me, all while letting her lover know he was a better lover, a bigger man, the only one who could satisfy her. These thoughts plunged me into a deep pit of pain and despair. But I knew I needed to pull myself out of it to carry out my plan to destroy them both. I needed a strong divorce lawyer, and Dan suggested I contact the law firm our company used for recommendations. I reached out to one of the corporate lawyers I knew, who gave me the names of 3 divorce attorneys known for defending a husband's rights effectively. The first attorney I called was about to retire and not taking new clients, but the second one said he could see me the next day at 3 p.m. With that set, I moved on to canceling credit cards, changing beneficiaries, and transferring funds. When I got home that evening, Sherry was in the kitchen making dinner while the kids did their homework in their rooms. She wore a yellow sundress and looked beautiful. For a moment, my heart almost broke again. She smiled and seemed happy. I assumed it was her usual post-afternoon high. "Hey, baby, how's my man doing? I hope your day was as good as mine," she said, making my eyebrows lift slightly. "My day was interesting, not great, but I discovered some things I didn't know. What made your day so good?" I already knew why she was in such a good mood. "I made a sale," she said. "My first one this week, and I might close another deal on Thursday when I show more houses." "Sounds like a lucky day," I said, without enthusiasm. "Anything else special? Meet anyone interesting or important?" She gave me a strange look. "No, just another day of work so I can come home to my family. You know where my heart is." While changing, I noticed the sheets were freshly replaced and the room smelled recently aired out. A glistening patch of water on the shower floor caught my attention, so I brought it up when I returned to the kitchen. "Did you shower this afternoon?" I asked. Sherry flinched at the question and turned to face me, her expression tinged with guilt. "No, why would I? That's silly." "I don't know," I said, maintaining eye contact. "But there's water on the shower floor, and it never stays there for long." She looked away, fidgeting with the lettuce in her hands. "Oh, the drain must be clogged again." "Yeah, maybe," I replied. "But I cleared it a couple of weeks ago. Maybe someone's sneaking in to meet their lover and showering afterward." She froze for a moment, her back to me, head lowered, then resumed tearing lettuce leaves. "Jack, you have quite the imagination," she said, her voice tight. "Is it imagination or maybe intuition?" I asked, watching her closely. "Sometimes it feels like I can read minds." Sherry forced a laugh, turning briefly to meet my gaze. "Well, if you could read mine, you'd see how much I love you." I nodded, the tension thick between us. "I'll be in my office. Let me know when dinner's ready." She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes clouded with worry. Dinner was quiet, punctuated by only the occasional clink of cutlery. Sherry's eyes widened slightly when I sat in her usual seat, forcing her to take mine. "Jack, you always sit there. Why switch now?" she asked, her voice uncertain. "Sometimes a change of scenery is nice," I replied evenly. She gave me an odd look and barely ate, moving the food around on her plate. The kids kept the conversation going while Sherry and I mostly listened and made occasional comments. After dinner, we all helped clean up before I retreated to my office to work. I reviewed the footage and selected frames to print, using my Epson T3000 for large, high-quality images. I carefully chose the captions to accompany them. I had a plan. Meet with the lawyer to initiate the divorce, secure my finances, and wait for Sherry and her lover's next encounter. When I finally went to bed, Sherry was already there, either asleep or pretending. My behavior must have given her something to worry about, but it didn't matter. Nothing she could say or do would change my decision to divorce her. If anything, making her anxious was a small bonus. Today was Tuesday, and she had hinted about another sale on Thursday. I took that as a sign they'd meet again. Thursday would be the day I ended it all. The next morning, I was up early, showered, and out the door before Sherry woke up. I had a lot to accomplish. My appointment with the lawyer wasn't until 3 p.m., so I had plenty of time to handle all the financial tasks. First, I went to HR to change the beneficiary on my life insurance and 401k from Sherry to Shelby and Ryan. The woman assisting me gave me a few strange looks, but I didn't feel the need to explain my reasons. Next, I canceled all of our joint credit cards and applied for one in my name only. Then I went to the bank and transferred half of the funds from our joint checking and savings accounts to a new account in my name. I knew I needed to address the matter of our house, but decided to wait and discuss it with my lawyer, as I assumed the court would let Sherry stay there with the kids. At 3 p.m., I met with the lawyer, who seemed like a decent person. He warned me, "She'll likely get custody of Shelby and Ryan, and you'll probably have to give her the house and half of your assets, even with proof of her infidelity." "Write it up anyway," I said firmly. "You won't get away with taking everything," he responded. "Don't worry, I'm confident I can make her agree to my terms," I told him. He reluctantly agreed, saying, "Everything will be ready for her to be served Friday morning." I also asked him to prepare a lawsuit against her boss and his company for intentionally destroying my marriage. These papers would be ready for Friday morning as well. I was prepared. That evening, when I got home, I was distant toward Sherry. My plan was already in motion, and I just wanted this nightmare to be over so I could start fresh. Though I knew there was still pain ahead, there was no turning back, and I was determined to share that pain with Sherry and her lover. Dinner was quiet, with minimal conversation. Afterward, I retreated to my office, printed the incriminating photos, and labeled them without interruption. I wrote a letter to Greg Allen's wife, including the photos I'd printed and mentioning I had video evidence if she chose to divorce him. Around 11 p.m., I checked to make sure Sherry was asleep, retrieved the voice recorder from her car, and listened. Most of it was standard business calls, but one stood out. "Hello, darling. Thanks again for today. I miss you too, especially after we're together. Yes, a whole week together would be amazing. Maybe we can plan that soon for a real estate convention." Laughter. "Yeah, baby, Thursday afternoon. Can't wait. Bye, baby." Surprisingly, hearing this didn't sting as much as before. She had no idea she was about to become his sole responsibility. The thought of ending their affair brought me a sense of satisfaction. Revenge, I found, was powerful. I replaced the tape with a new one and put the recorder back, hoping it would capture her reaction when her world came crashing down. I barely slept that night, not from heartache, but from anticipation. When morning came, I stood watching Sherry, the woman I'd loved, the mother of my children, whom I once believed I'd grow old with. Tears welled in my eyes as I realized I'd spent my last night with her. Never again would we share intimate moments or dream about the future together. There was no future. As I turned away, I wondered if she knew the cost of her betrayal. She would soon. After showering, I left the house, had breakfast at a diner, and stopped by work to inform my secretary I'd be gone all day. I called Dan to update him. He wished me luck and asked for an update afterward. I then stopped by my lawyer's office to confirm everything was in place for Sherry and Greg Allen to be served the next day. After that, I called Sherry and told her I'd pick up the kids from school and take them to my mom's for the long weekend. Sherry sounded pleased and, with a flirtatious tone, said, "Saturday we'll have the whole day to ourselves in bed." "Sure," I replied, hanging up immediately. I couldn't stand to hear her lies any longer. I wasn't in a hurry to get home. By 12:30, I was parked around the corner, waiting for the events to unfold. Hidden from view, I had a clear line of sight to the driveway and didn't need to watch the garage door. At 12:50 p.m., Sherry pulled into the driveway, followed by Greg Allen 5 minutes later. I should have felt pain at the thought of them in my bed, but I felt nothing. I was surprisingly calm, imagining their actions like scenes from a cheap movie with a predictable plot, but a dramatic ending. By 2:50, Greg's car left and Sherry followed 10 minutes later. As soon as they left, I drove into the garage and shut the door. I had a lot to do and not much time to get it done. I went to my office to check the recording. Everything was captured, but at this point, I felt indifferent. After confirming the footage was securely downloaded to my hard drive, I spent 10 minutes bringing the explicit photo signs upstairs and placing them by the front door for easy access. Then I packed a toothbrush and clothes for Shelby and Ryan and loaded them into my car. My only regret was the pain I was about to cause the two kids I loved more than anything. But I reminded myself that this pain was not my doing. It was entirely on their mother. At 3:15, I picked up the kids as the final school bell rang and told them they'd be spending the weekend with Grandma. They were thrilled since she always spoiled them. 45 minutes later, I dropped them off and headed back home to set my plan in motion. This leads us back to where everything began. The bed, table, and rug laid out on the lawn with all the signs while the neighbors watched. Sherry arrived home, horrified to discover that I knew everything. Sherry didn't contact me that evening, though I expected she might. The police came an hour after she left. They were sympathetic, but insisted I remove the signs and photos or face charges for disturbing the peace and obscenity. I took them down. They had served their purpose. Sherry saw them, and the look on her face told me her life was beginning to fall apart. I woke up Friday with a terrible hangover, but felt strong. Though sad and lonely, I knew I had the resolve to channel my anger into completing my revenge on my unfaithful wife and her lover. By noon, I pulled back the curtains and saw that the carpet, kitchen table, and bed were gone. Only the mattress and stained sheets remained. I'll deal with those later, I thought. The morning passed uneventfully, but at 3 p.m., everything erupted. I was sure Greg Allen's wife had received the letter and photos earlier that day. My lawyer called to tell me Sherry, Greg, and his partners had been served at work. I was there when it happened, he said. Sherry screamed and collapsed, sobbing, while Greg stormed around the office calling you names and threatening you. Greg's partners, however, locked themselves in a room for 15 minutes, then emerged to hand Sherry her final paycheck, saying, "Your services are no longer needed." Greg was handed a check for his partnership share. When he protested, they cited the section of the company's charter regarding morality and relationships with employees, which allowed them to sever ties with him and Sherry. At the same time, the receptionist told Greg that his wife was on the phone, demanding to speak with him. She'd received the letter and photos and informed him not to come home, adding she would be filing for divorce the next day. I later learned from the husband of one of the agency's employees that after Greg was escorted out, everyone turned their backs on Sherry as she lay on the floor, sobbing for half an hour. At one point, she managed to gather herself and leave the building, though no one knew where she went. The next day, Sherry finally called me. Her voice was strained as she asked, "Where are the kids? Do they know?" "They're safe with my mother," I said. "They know nothing, and they won't hear any sordid details from me."
Thank you,
Sherry whispered. After a pause, she added, "Can I come by to collect some of my things?" "You can," I replied, "but let me know when so I can be out for a few hours while you gather what you need." "Could you stay and talk?" she asked, her voice wavering. "I have nothing to say," I said flatly. Sherry began to cry. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "You need to know that, Jack. I never meant to hurt you." A bitter laugh escaped me. "How can you tell me you're sorry, Sherry, and that you never meant to hurt me? What did you think I'd do when I found out? Applaud you too? I didn't want you to find out," she pleaded. "I love you, Jack. I've never loved anyone but you." "I don't think you believe that, Sherry," I said coldly. "How could you? After telling your lover he made you feel better than I ever could? That he was the only man who completed you?" "Jack, I never said that," she protested. "How could you think I would say those things?" "Because I have recordings, Sherry. Every word, every insult you threw at me in front of him, every degrading thing you said about me, your husband." Sherry fell silent. I continued, "I have nothing more to say to you, and there's nothing you can say to change how I feel." "I love you, Jack," she insisted. "You have to believe me. I've always loved only you. I don't know why I said those things to Greg. You have to understand, I didn't mean them. I was just trying to boost his ego because he always said his wife put him down." I shook my head, incredulous. "So let me get this straight. You belittled me and tore me down in front of him to build up his ego because you pitied him. Is that your story? You felt sorry that his wife humiliated him, so you humiliated me and slept with him for 6 months just to make him feel better?" "Yes, Jack," she admitted. "I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't mean any of it." "If that's true, why did you do it? It's shocking it took me this long to see how pathetic you are and how foolish I was." "Jack, I don't love him," she said desperately. "I love you. Please give me a chance to fix this. I'll prove it to you. This doesn't have to be the end. Let me show you. Please, Jack, don't leave me." "Sorry, Sherry," I said, my voice firm. "I don't love you anymore, and I didn't leave you. You left me. The things you did with him and the cruel things you said about me for 6 months show that you don't love me. You can't love someone and wish them that much pain and humiliation. You're disgusting, Sherry, and I can't wait for you to be out of my life. The only connection we'll have is the kids. Remember them? Shelby and Ryan, the children we created when we were a family. I'll do everything to spare them pain, but not you. I want you and Greg to feel every bit of the pain you caused me." "Why did you tell his wife?" she asked, her voice small. "It wasn't fair." I stared at her. "Are you serious, Sherry? What you did to me and our kids wasn't fair." "Why did I tell her?" "Because 1, he destroyed my family by sleeping with my wife. 2, he took what I thought was exclusively mine and made you tell him how amazing he was while you demeaned me. 3, his wife deserved to know who she was married to. What she does next is her choice." "They have kids, Jack," she said weakly. "So do I, Sherry," I replied, "and I want to protect them. I feel sorry for his kids too, but if they face losing their father, that's on him. And you." I refuse to take any blame. "I don't want a divorce, Jack. I'll fight for us," she said, a note of defiance in her voice. "There's nothing left to fight for. I'd rather die than stay tied to you." "I know you love me, Jack. You can't just stop loving me over one mistake," she said, almost pleading. "You're out of your mind," I said. "Did you read the divorce papers?" "No, why? If you just listen and let me make it right, there won't need to be a divorce." "If not for me, Do it for Shelby and Ryan, she said. They need both parents. They'll have both parents, I said coldly. We just won't be married or live together. If you had read the papers, you'd see that as long as you agree to joint custody, you can stay in the house and have half of our assets. What's not in the papers, but what I'm telling you now, is that if you don't sign and accept these generous terms, I'll make sure everyone sees those videos, including your parents, sister, and anyone else I can think of. You wouldn't, Jack, she whispered. You can't hate me that much. You're wrong, Sherry, I said, my voice hardening. I do hate you, and nothing will stop me. Fight me, and I'll ruin your life forever. And yes, I hate you that much. Please, Jack, she sobbed. Don't do this. Sign the divorce papers, Sherry. Please, Jack, let me make it up to you, she begged. No, sign the papers. A defeated whisper came from her. Oh, God, just sign the papers. Sherry and I ended the call. She signed the divorce papers, and it was finalized 6 months later. She stayed in the house with Shelby and Ryan, while I moved into a condo a few blocks away. Since we remained in the same school district, the children's routines were minimally disrupted. Although both kids felt the pain of the divorce, Shelby told me that Sherry admitted she had made a huge mistake and that our marriage couldn't survive. We reassured the kids that we would always be there for them. I'm not sure what Sherry told her parents and sister about our split, but since they still talked to me, I doubt she blamed me. As for my mother, it was simply a situation that neither Sherry nor I could avoid. I had one last chance to retrieve the recorder from Sherry's car, and what I heard was unforgettable. On her way home, she called Greg to thank him for their great day, but mentioned that she thought I might be suspicious and suggested they lay low for a couple of weeks. When she arrived and saw the crowd in front of the house and the signs with the photos, her shocked screams nearly broke the recorder. As she left, she cried and said, "What did you do, Jack? What did you do?" Then, as the reality hit her like cold water, she changed to, "Oh, God, what did I do? No, please, God, what have I done? Make this all go away." She managed to call Greg, and when he picked up, she shouted, "He knows, Greg! Jack knows everything about us!" After that, I cried for a long time. It's been over a year since everything fell apart, and I'm slowly piecing my life back together. I'm not dating and probably won't be for a while. The idea of going through something similar again makes me cautious about starting another serious relationship. Shelby told me that her mom went on one date but came home crying and, as far as she knows, hasn't dated since. Sherry now works as a secretary at a retirement village. I never found out if she kept in touch with Greg Allen, and I don't care. Greg Allen and his wife divorced, and he couldn't find a job. While I didn't send the videos to anyone, Sherry knew I didn't make it easy for Greg. Many companies are wary of hiring someone known for seducing married women and wrecking marriages. Although I blurred Sherry's face in the video, I kept the audio intact. I recently heard that Greg's ex-wife is dating a nice guy who's a police officer, and it seems serious. Good for her. As for Greg's former company, they made a generous offer to avoid any potential lawsuits. I accepted. And from what I know, that chapter is closed. Now my only focus is on my kids and their future. Maybe one day I'll care about my own future again, too. A year after the betrayal that turned my world upside down, life had found a sort of rhythm. It wasn't the life I had imagined, with mornings filled with laughter over breakfast, Shelby running around the house, and Ryan's giggles echoing up the stairs as Sherry joined me with a smile. Those moments were gone, distant memories held in my mind like relics from another time. Still, life moved on, even if it wasn't the version I once treasured. The first few months post-divorce were the toughest. The house felt suffocatingly quiet. Every room stood as a stark reminder of what had been lost. The bedroom I once shared with Sherry was stripped of anything personal. The photos, bedding, even the little trinkets she placed on the nightstand were all gone. I thought about redecorating to make the space my own, but the idea felt empty. Instead, I threw myself into work and spent as much time with Shelby and Ryan as possible, pouring myself into them to fill the void in my heart. Shelby had an unyielding inner light. At 9, she was perceptive beyond her years. Her questions often struck deep, making me confront emotions I wasn't ready for. One evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, she looked at me with those wide, searching eyes. "Dad, do you think people who hurt each other can ever be happy again?" The question made my chest tighten. I wanted to reassure her that everything would be okay, that time healed all, but I wasn't sure it was true. "I think people can try, Shelby. And sometimes trying is all we have," I finally said. She nodded as if she understood, though I wasn't sure I did. Ryan approached life differently. At 6, he was a whirlwind of energy, always searching for the next thing to capture his attention. But there were moments when his bravado cracked, and I'd catch him looking at old photos or sitting quietly by the window, deep in thought. When I found him like that, I'd sit with him, saying nothing, just being there. Eventually, he'd look up and give me a small smile, and I'd know that in our silent way we were holding each other up. Sherry and I reached a kind of truce, an uneasy balance where communication was brief and practical, focused solely on the kids. There were no arguments, no accusations, just an unspoken agreement to keep our emotions buried, at least outwardly. The first time I saw her after the fallout with Greg, her eyes were swollen, and she avoided my gaze. She was a different version of the woman I had once loved, moving carefully, as if one wrong move would shatter everything again. Through it all, Sherry's love for Shelby and Ryan remained steadfast. She was present at every school event, every parent-teacher meeting, clearly trying to make up for her mistakes in the only way she knew how. One day, after a school play, she came up to me as the kids ran to join their friends. "Jack, thank you for still letting me be part of this." Her voice was barely a whisper, and her hands trembled. "It's for them," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. The pain in her eyes was obvious, but I didn't feel triumph, just emptiness. Work became my refuge. Projects that once seemed routine took on new meaning. I buried myself in them, spending late nights at the office, not because I needed to, but because I had to. Dan, a friend and colleague, became my sounding board. He never pushed for details unless I shared them. Sometimes he'd come by with a beer, and we'd sit in silence, the understanding between us stronger than any words. Things changed when Ryan's soccer team needed a coach. The old me would have said no, citing work or exhaustion. But when Ryan asked, eyes bright with excitement, I couldn't refuse. The practices were chaotic at first, full of shouted directions and straight kicks, but soon they became the best part of my week. Shelby would join us on the sidelines, her voice rising above the noise as she cheered for her brother, a reminder that joy still existed, however brief. One evening after practice, Shelby came up to me with a thoughtful expression. "You're happier now, Dad," she said, more a statement than a question. I nodded, feeling a tightness in my throat. "I think I am," I said, surprised by the realization. She smiled and took my hand, and in that moment, I knew we would be okay. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but eventually. Sherry moved out in the fall, finding an apartment nearby so Shelby and Ryan could easily go between our homes. The first time I dropped them off, the goodbye was quick. I watched as they ran to her, their laughter echoing in the hallway. Sherry stood at the doorway, her eyes meeting mine for just a moment. "Thank you, Jack," she said, and for the first time in a while, her voice sounded genuine. I nodded and turned away before the old wounds could resurface. The emptiness in the house was both a relief and a reminder. Nights were the hardest, with the silence pressing down on me. On those nights, I'd go through old family albums, letting the memories wash over me, not in grief, but as a way to honor what once was. It hurt, yes, but it was also healing. I learned to find peace not in forgetting, but in accepting. Sherry's life changed too. From what I gathered, she had taken a job as a secretary at a local retirement home. It was a big change from her previous life, but it seemed to suit her. Shelby once mentioned that her mom had gone on a date but came home in tears. I didn't feel satisfaction, just a hint of sympathy, a reminder that life was complicated, and even those who hurt us could feel pain and regret. Greg Allen, the man who disrupted my marriage, was a different story. Word got around that he struggled to find work, his reputation trailing him like a dark shadow. The letter and photos I had sent to his wife did their job, unraveling his carefully built life. His divorce was swift and public, and he soon faded into obscurity. It wasn't revenge that brought me satisfaction, but a sense of justice, the realization that actions have consequences. There were small wins in this new chapter. Shelby won her first school spelling bee, and Ryan scored his first soccer goal, running into my arms afterward, beaming with pride. These moments reminded me that while I couldn't change the past, the future was still ours to shape. I started focusing more on myself, getting back into running and reconnecting with old friends. The grief of betrayal lingered, but it had softened into a manageable ache, a whisper instead of a shout. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Sherry called me. It was a short conversation, a request for help with Ryan's math homework. It was the first time we spoke without the weight of the past hanging over us. After we hung up, I sat there, feeling a mix of emotions. It wasn't reconciliation. It was acceptance. As spring turned to summer, I realized I was no longer the man who once trusted blindly. I was more cautious, but also stronger and more present. The scars Sherry left were part of me, but they no longer defined me. I wasn't ready for a new relationship, but the idea didn't make me flinch anymore. I believed that one day love could be possible again, built on lessons learned and trust restored. The kids adjusted, moving between their two homes with a resilience that inspired me. Shelby would sometimes ask about the before time, as she called it, and I'd share stories not as fairy tales, but with all their complexity. Ryan rarely asked, but he'd sometimes come to my bed at night without a word. I'd hold him close, knowing that in those silent moments, we were healing together. Life after betrayal was not what I expected. It was raw, messy, and full of moments that tested me to my core, but it was also full of growth, small victories that reminded me why I kept moving forward. I learned that forgiveness wasn't for Sherry or Greg. It was for me, a way to release the past so I could walk freely into the future. Today, as I watch Shelby practice her dance routine and Ryan play soccer with his friends, I know that this is what truly matters. The past is always there, a quiet witness to where I've been, but it's not where I live. I live here, in the laughter of my children, in the warmth of a sunny afternoon, in the steady, unbroken rhythm of my own heart, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough.